So in this video, I'm going to go over the types of inflation and the preferable level of inflation. So inflation is a term that we hear all the time, and what does it really mean, and why is it so important? Um, so starting off, we're going to talk about disinflation. Disinflation is when the rate of inflation slows down, but prices are still rising, just at a slower rate than they were before. So as you can see here on the graph, on this left side of the graph here, we have inflation and the rate is rising. Sorry, it's a little pixelated. But here on the right, we start to have disinflation where the inflation rate is still going down, but this does not mean that prices are necessarily um, shrinking. They're just rising at a slower rate than they were before. Um, so, for example, if the inflation rate was at 5% and then it slows down to 2%, then we have disinflation. Um, and so instead of the price of something like a coffee being $3.50, it might only be $3.20 when we have disinflation. Moving on to hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is the other extreme of the spectrum. It is a rapid increase in the prices of goods. Hyperinflation decreases savings and destabilizes an economy because people are having to spend much more of their money and the funds that they have in savings to cover their expenses. So as you can see on the graph on the right here, if we look at these numbers on the x-axis as days, in the first 2 days, inflation is still relatively low. In the next 2 days, inflation is getting a little worse. And by the sixth day, inflation has shot through the roof. So you can imagine hyperinflation uh, as, say, the price of a coffee is $5 one week, and then the next week it's $500 because of hyperinflation. The last type that I would like to talk about is deflation. So deflation is when prices fall. And this sounds like a good thing, but it can be extremely detrimental to an economy. This is bad for economies because it signals to the consumers that prices will be lower in the future. This decreases their current consumption, which slows down the entire economy, and this can also lead to greater unemployment. So on the graphs here on the right, you can see aggregate demand is falling and price level is falling. Um, And on this bottom graph here, you can see aggregate demand actually goes down twice, and it will continue to go down in what we call a uh, deflationary spiral. And yes, prices are going down, but people are not consuming at that level. So they're consuming less and less and less as prices go down. So believe it or not, there's actually a preferable level of inflation that we would like to have. The ideal level would be between 2 and 3% because this keeps the economy growing. With this ideal level of inflation, people are still encouraged to spend their money, uh, and they don't lose very much purchasing power when they do. Uh, and so a little inflation is good because it helps businesses grow. Those businesses are able to increase wages gradually, and then it makes debts easier to repay. So instead of having hyperinflation where debts would be very hard to pay, if we just have a little bit of inflation, you're only paying a little bit more every year. As far as businesses, their prices can continue to rise with inflation, which allows them to make more revenue and pay more wages to their employees over time. But the overall effect is too much inflation can destabilize an economy, and too little inflation can make it stall because people are waiting to have lower prices in deflationary period. Um, but just the right amount of inflation is the best for a stable and growing economy. Thank you.